All right, you
Love
are
it.
back, and I am so excited to have you back.
Yay! Me too.
Yes, and we so obviously I just hit record, but we were saying like I'm moving to Texas next week, and by the time actually literally by the time this drops, the day of, it will be this week, and if people listen later, I will already be there. So
Welcome back home. I
I know
know you've
it's
got roots
wild.
in Texas, so that's super exciting.
I know I'm really excited. I mean, I just have so much respect for single parents, for solo parents, for everything that's
Mhm.
going on with people. And like my husband's been gone. Austin's been gone since Monday, and he'll get home tonight at like 11:55 p.m. And so it's 4 whole days. Obviously, my kids go to school, so let's not like be too dramatic about it, but it's just a lot. And so I'm really excited to be able to be back in a space where I have friends that I can just be like, hey, Austin's gone for 5 days. Can we have a play date after school? Can we do dinner together? Can we go to the park? And not
Right.
feel so isolated.
Yeah, yeah. And it's one of the pros, but I think also one of the hard parts about parenting is like, especially for our generation, I think we recognize the importance of that community and like pulling on your friends and support. But at the same time, most of us don't live, right across the street from each other. So it's like when you need that support, you have to go after it. You have to ask for it a lot of times. Not that, we don't have people around that will check in and whatnot, but I feel that we are gearing up for my husband to be in Australia next week for 10 days.
And
So
so
that's
tell
going to
me
be
about the
fun.
plan. Where's the community? Where's the, like, what are we
Yeah,
doing?
the community's there, and it's kind of cool being in that phase where they're a little bit older. I mean, 6 and 4, they're still little, but I feel like I'm on steady footing with the whole thing. And like this is one of the first times he's going out of town that I'm like, I'll be fine. Like there wasn't really a
Hmm.
hesitation. I'm more freaking out about the fact that he will be on the other side of the earth, which is
Wild.
really weird. We've
So
never
wild.
been that far apart from each other, so there's just a weird element to that.
Yeah. No, for
Reality.
sure. For sure. And he's going to be fully out of pocket for like what, 24 hours to
Something
travel.
like that. And then a
Yeah.
weird time change. I mean, yeah, I don't know. We'll figure it out, but
I'm going to go ahead and ask this, even though I know the audience doesn't care, but you brought it up and I'm curious. Is there a direct flight from Dallas, from DFW to where's he going in Australia?
yeah, Perth, which is like the farthest
So no, the answer is
end
obviously
of the
yeah.
island. No, I think he's flying into California and then maybe
Yeah.
there is a direct flight at that point, something like that. But he'll be up in the
I
air
know,
for
listener, I
quite
know
a
you
few
don't
hours.
care. I know you don't care, but I just wanted to ask. So thank you for giving me that 30 seconds to inquire. We were
Anytime.
supposed to go to New Zealand. Um,
Mm.
in April of 2020. Everyone can roll their eyes and imagine why that didn't happen. But it was a really wild thing because our son he would have been 9 months old at the time, and my parents were going to watch him. And that was just a wild contemplation then to be like, okay, bye. I mean, of course, that was different because it was both of us, but still, just the idea. And it's just so tough for people with
Yes.
travel and schedules. And Austin's going to Italy for 9 days in April, and my parents are going to drive down. God bless them, driving down from Louisville. So that'll
Oh,
be
nice.
so lovely. So lovely.
Yeah, that is amazing to have those family members and the community around for these
Yeah.
times, especially when
Yeah.
you're a working mom. I mean,
It's so
working outside of the home, that is.
well, it's so interesting that you bring that up. So I really, before we even, this is what we're talking about today. Lovely segue, so natural. Look at us, little podcastresses. But so
Pros.
it's really interesting because I really like to clarify that for people. I could do a whole separate episode on the idea of like stay-at-home parents and the struggles that they have with the idea of like I need to be able to do it by myself because it's my job and da da da. And it's like, yes, it is your job, understanding that you have it. This is a job though. Like you are working for no pay, whereas I am working for pay. And even in a private practice setting, I still have a community consultation group, and I can always text, like I know I can reach out to you if I need anything. Like there are people who
Hmm.
can help me, and people who go to work, who very few people work fully in a silo, whereas stay-at-home parents often are like, no, this is my job. So I have to do it. Like heaven forbid I ask for help or a babysitter or like anything. And it's really conceptualizing it in that way of like, you're also working, you're just not getting paid. Like and also it's your 8 to 5, but from 5 to 8, we're partners and we're both parents and we're both working. So that's a whole different podcast conversation, but like just
It is, but it's relevant. It's so
it's
relevant.
so relevant
Yeah.
though, because like what we're talking about today, that is you building your business, and your business is taking care of and raising amazing humans who support the earth in meaningful ways.
Right, right. Give us back, life and all that stuff. But it's so funny. I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were just, sharing stories and experiences and commiserating a little bit about the hard weeks of parenting and whatever. And both sharing just like adult diagnoses we've both received. And like for me, I don't even know if I told you this, I got an ADHD
Yes.
diagnosis. I sound like I'm like a Willy Wonka. I got the golden ticket. But it really surprised me, but we're both like, yeah, why is that happening so much more frequently for women? And we just went on a rabbit trail of just all the ways our
But it's so
mind feels.
true.
Yeah, we feel really stretched. We're off focus a lot of times. I mean, that's what I was experiencing was just like, ooh, I got to a point where it was like I'm plugged into like way too many
Mhm.
different worlds in my life. Like yeah, we'll talk probably more about that. But, last year I really felt like the challenge of waking up and being a mom and kind of getting life going that way and then shifting in the afternoon to like being in therapy sessions and working with clients and doing this deep, intensive trauma work. And then I got to go home and like make dinner and deal with a meltdown. And then it's like, yeah, no wonder people just want to kind of sit on their ass at 9 o'clock and stare at their partner and be like, how did we just get through that?
Yes, it's so wild. So
Some days
there's
are harder than others, that's for sure.
well, it's interesting because ADHD, I don't remember which DSM it might have been for text revision, where it was like ADHD required childhood onset in order to have the diagnosis, and they've gotten rid of that in the 5 and the 5 TR. And that's why you and I were talking before we hit record about like my goal right now, my goal potentially is to like get a PhD and be able to do some research into like perinatal onset.
Yeah.
And perinatal doesn't apply to a birthing person only, but just any sort of like as you are becoming in parenting, what that does, certainly to a birthing person whose brain structure physically changes. Please go back and listen to the Mother Brain episode with Chelsea Conboy if you have not. But also just in general, like the idea of the things that the tickering that goes on, the neural pathways that are created as a result of the way that we are focusing different on different things, the habits that we've created, the all of it and how that impacts. Plus, I mean, not to give away too much from the book that I'm writing, but like quarantine did us no favors.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
think of the maladaptive behaviors that we participated in when we were sitting at home. Again, bless those of us who didn't have the luxury of being able to sit at home and stay safe, but a lot of us did. And so it is really interesting. And so many more people are recognizing whether or not you have the diagnosis, whether or not you have the golden ticket, but just knowing like the things that we're being able to be more aware of and recognizing. Plus, not to get too much of my patriarchy soapbox, but like girls generally were not diagnosed. I don't know how I got one in 94. Bless my parents for being like, this chick can't sit still and I don't know what this is. And luckily we got a
Mhm.
psychiatrist who was like, no, it's not a biological sex thing. She has ADHD and here's what we're going to do for it. Because yeah, back in the
Yeah.
day, it's the same thing as underdiagnosis with autism. Like
Sure.
girls don't have ADHD. What?
Totally. Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
we live in a really exciting time and it's a complicated time, but it's it's nice to see a lot more like light shining on those very normal, very real experiences for people, especially kids that really need that help. But it came with relief for me. I'm like, this is helpful to have
Yes.
something I can kind of like wrap meaning around that as weird as it sounds, because I hear clients say this stuff all day long. Like I was grappling with my own, like, am I just crazy? Like, am
Yeah.
I just XYZ? And, the self doubt and the self judgment really creeps in and can make it hard. And if there's one thing I know about working with business owners, entrepreneurs, creatives in therapy, but also just in like network communities, we all struggle with this stuff. We really do. And like nobody, even the people you think really have their shit together and seem just on top of it all, like they have challenges too and struggle.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so,
Yeah. But
Feels good
then
to know
that's the
that.
thing. One of the other setbacks from social media in general is that we have people out there who are like, look at the things that I've done. Look at all the stuff I've created. Let me look at this, look at this, look at this. And it's like, well, yes, but like, let's acknowledge all of the other things so that it's not, I don't know. It's up to us. Obviously, it's not up to us to tell other people what to do. It's up to us to have the boundary of what we consume and saying.
Mm-hmm.
I recognize that that person sits in different places of privilege than I do. I recognize that that person has different experiences than I do. And just because I'm not as successful as they are doesn't mean that I'm doing something wrong or that I'm deficient in some way, which is very hard because, again, like the whole point of
Yeah.
this conversation that we're getting to is talking about motherhood and entrepreneurship and building businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And you see people who are just like starting something similar, not identical to what you want to do, and just it takes off. And certainly you don't see the legwork behind it. The thing that I like to think of is it feels like Lizzo. I'm sure you're familiar with Lizzo, the
Mm-hmm.
great Houstonian. Um, feels like she just kind of was dropped onto this planet by the universe in a magical diamond purple fluted
With her flute. Yeah.
being. Um,
Mm-hmm.
scandal acknowledged moving forward. But she talks, I listened to her on a show on Howard Stern, and she was talking about like, I lived in my car. Like I was struggling like this. But it's just like Juice came out and everyone was like, oh my gosh, like she just decided to start singing yesterday and now she's amazing and going. And so I think about
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of like, I'm lucky I don't have to live in my car. There's a place of privilege upon which I sit. And also the other things that are happening, the things that are taking time, the opportunities for learning and growth that are all important in that space.
Yes. I mean, I don't even know where to go with that. It's huge. I think it's so important to hear those stories because you're right. Like collectively, we kind of make up these narratives about successful people and, certainly, yeah, just like you're saying, all the Instagram, the social media stuff. I mean, um, I really had to put some structure and I still feel in a lot of ways that I'm figuring this out. And it's funny because it's like I've been doing this, I don't know, my practice over 6 years as a
Mhm.
group, but therapy for 10 years. Have I known you
Ever,
like how long
forever.
have I known you? 15 years, something
2014,
like that?
babe. 10
Okay, yeah.
years.
10 years. That's crazy.
Mhm.
But
Good
yeah,
old
like
rehab.
I'm just getting a handle on like the importance of not tuning into all that noise because it's like not the full story. I like the full story. Now I want to go find that podcast and listen to Lizzo
Uh,
tell her real
We'll go on
story.
Howard Stern. First of all, Howard Stern interviews are he is
Yeah.
as personal to me. Even before I had ever thought about having a podcast, anytime we do a road trip, Austin and I, which not so much now because our kids, well, we have kids. We started doing it before we had kids, and then we had babies, and then like they don't need to be listening to the things that Howard Stern says sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to hear, just to conceptualize like that's not always the same thing, and that's
Mhm.
not the whole picture. And we don't start in the same place.
Mhm.
And I did want to, sorry, that saying the rehab, I apologize for the reverse tangent, but I did just want to mention that too about the diagnosis that you were discussing,
Yeah.
because I specialize in perinatal focused concerns, not necessarily the diagnosis, and understanding too, like if you don't get the ADHD diagnosis, if you're not able to access whatever it might be, the most important thing is recognizing the things that are causing you that stress. And of course, hey, Colonel, please, sir. Focusing on the things like it doesn't matter whether or not you've been diagnosed with ADHD, or the rehab was what made me think of it, because we had some participants in the program who like
Mhm.
the title of addict was so meaningful for them, and it was really helpful for them to feel empowered and motivated, and this is my
Mhm.
journey as an addict and in recovery, versus some people are like, well, I'm not an addict. And it's like, who am I to tell you what to call yourself, as long as you understand what your process is, what your path is, what your goals are, looking
Right.
forward to where you're going. The title doesn't necessarily matter unless it matters to you. And
Mhm.
even still, it's understanding like where you want to go and where you want to go with the
Mhm.
information you have right now, because we'll continue to, like you said, we've been on social media for so long. We've been therapists for so long, but like even last week in my last podcast, I used to say, when you keep score, everyone loses. And I had Zach Watson on, recovering man child. And he was like, well, let's talk about the
I love
difference.
that.
Yeah, I love him. Again, man, I'm gonna have so many references in this podcast. Like, check the link for this episode, check the link for this episode.
But
But he talks,
you're putting so many good ones out, so do
but
it.
he was that is so kind. Thank you. But he talked about the difference between like scorekeeping and stat keeping, where like scorekeeping, we want to win the game, like a football metaphor, which we did talk about. And like, so we do want to make sure that we are winning and we're checking in with each other and understanding. But stat keeping is like, I folded this many socks, so you have to fold this many socks. And I washed the dishes this many times, so you have like stat keeping. And that was literally last 2 weeks ago. And that I've already been able to implement that into my therapy. And I've been doing that. I've been a therapist since 2011. So like,
That's
we continue
awesome.
to learn and grow and seek out more information and learn from other people. And also, I feel like I'm talking too much. Like, is this your podcast that I'm on right now? Because I'm talking way a lot and I don't know why.
I'm actually getting so much from this though. And it's making my wheels turn because my origin is as a marriage and family therapist. So
Right.
come from that relational systemic
Yes.
background or whatever and
Right.
strong foundation. And I've worked with a lot of couples. And like in growing my business and kind of going on the path I've gone on, like I have just come to find like everything I've learned and integrated in couples therapy has helped me so much, like in my business, with my leadership team, with the colleagues on my team, with my husband, obviously, but friends and family and all those kinds of things. And then, the rise of like internal family systems therapy, very popular form of therapy right now. At least I feel that way. It's like all over social media and
No, for
therapy
sure.
world. I hear about it so much, but I really like that framework, and it just really led me to kind of integrate and pull in all the things I had received from the couple and relational training into myself. So like kind of changing the way I have been with me. And I would say that's been a big saving grace of being able to do it all, which I don't, but
Aha.
because that's another great secret too, when you have all these things going on. And I
Yeah.
recognize the privilege that that is, but to be in a place where, yeah, we can finally outsource this, or yay, the business has grown enough that we can hire on a manager and like things like that, you really get to embody um that practice of like not doing everything because you will
Hmm.
crumble if you do. I think the pandemic told me that for sure. That was like when I had my very first panic attacks. It was great, you
Oh,
know.
delightful.
That was
Do
a
we want
really
to jump into that or do we want to casually glide past it?
Ooh, I don't even know if I can remember like nitty-gritty details because man, it's like, how like phases in life are just a foggy blur. I don't
Yes.
even know if I'd give you like factual data.
It's fine.
But I have memories
Yeah.
of, I mentioned my kids are 6 and 4, like I was
Hmm.
nursing a
Which blows my
baby, like
mind. Blows my
hmm?
mind. I said, which blows my mind. Six.
Well, I know it's so crazy. They're growing.
My
Um,
oldest starts kindergarten this year, which I literally just
oh
was,
my
I'm like looking for a therapist because I want to unpack, speaking of ADHD and the diagnosis, like,
mhm.
oh my gosh, this is such a tangent. What is wrong with me today? I don't know. Y'all are just
That's
along for the ride. Thank you,
fine.
listener. Thank you, Liz.
Something like probed it in your mind.
I was listening, I was watching Abbott Elementary, crocheting a cardigan for my girlfriend during my lunch break. And they were talking about the gifted and talented program. There was an episode about that and how like with the kids who weren't and how that helps them, that fosters an environment of like a fixed mindset where I'm only this smart, and because I'm not in that I can't ever be smart, and not talking about like, and they address like the different types of intellect, like natural intellect and science and physical, all those different things. And I like recognized within me the anxiety that was bubbling up because I was in the gifted program. I did grow up being told how intelligent I was. Anytime I thought that I didn't understand something, it was like hide it, fix it, find it, fear, because I'm smart. I'm not
Um,
supposed to not understand, which again, read, and everybody out there has heard me say this on my show, read Carol Dweck's book Mindset about that. And I'm like, really, anyway, but and I was like,
mhm,
I need to really unpack my childhood trauma from elementary school and it's like my oppositional defiant tendencies, undiagnosed, but I think I had it, probably still
mhm,
do if I work by
mhm.
myself. Um, but I'm terrified for my son because he displays, although I'm not diagnosing him, HIPAA, uh,
That is
ASW,
so hard. That is like the
don't
worst
take,
rule.
I'm,
It's like when you tell somebody to calm down and they're like not feeling calm, like it's gonna make it. Okay, don't diagnose your kids. But we live with these humans all day, every day, a lot, and
yeah,
like
yeah.
we know
And I remember
something.
I don't remember being 4 as in tune as I do being 5, and he's not 5 yet, but like I just really want to make sure that I'm setting us both up for success, and I'm recognizing some of the anxiety or some of the moods that I've been experiencing leading up to the move. Like yesterday, I enrolled him in elementary school, which by the way takes
Wow.
forever. Gosh, the paperwork, the digital paperwork,
Yep.
and how that. So I'm like, I really want to make sure that I go and unpack my situations and the thing that went on with me, so that I can help have that clarity and the stability for myself to be able to pass that along. Not to say like, let me tell you about my childhood, but when I am recognizing this, to be able to advocate for him, to be able to hold him accountable and all those different things.
Do you ever find that like being a therapist and like, just being so versed in all the things that you are makes that piece of parenting really difficult
Yes.
sometimes?
Yes, say more. Yes.
I mean, I don't know. Like I can relate. I do relate, and I very much identify with like a hero child's childhood, feeling elevated for not necessarily brain smarts, but like musical talent, and like, the
Yes.
artistic stuff that I did. And, it's like my perspective is my perspective. I think I have incredible parents and a great family
Yes.
situation, but
So
it's
good.
like, and it's never negating that, right? But I think that impacted me. And yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. What was I talking about?
Well, we were talking, but and that's the thing too. Again, we learn more as we know and we grow and we move forward. Like our parents at the time, you're a little younger than I am, but same
Mhm,
generation, where like it was like girl power, girls
mhm.
could do anything. So like when you
Very
show
much.
proclivity for something, it was like, yes, baby, you've got this. You're amazing. Go, go, go. You can do whatever you want. And like,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they certainly didn't experience that themselves. And
Yeah.
so my
Yeah.
parents are outstanding. I mean, I could just one day I'd love to have my mama on, but
Yeah.
she's not interested. She's not interested. But yeah, so it's
Yeah.
just trying to make sure that we don't repeat some mistakes. It's trying to figure out how to put those things in. And in our role specifically as therapists, it's hard. Yeah, it is hard not to recognize certain traits and things that we might see in another child. Mine are 2 and 4, so like
Mm-hmm.
legally not diagnosable, but that doesn't mean that traits aren't displayed
Mm-hmm.
prior to the age of diagnosis. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's figuring out like that
Yeah.
piece. We're
Well, and
all over the place today on tangents. We're supposed to be talking about building businesses, but I love this conversation and I don't
I
care.
mean, isn't that what it is though? Like if there's one thing, and I love your mug, it's adorable.
Thank you. For those of
If
you who
I,
are not on the video, it is an M&M. I'm the orange M&M.
it's
It's a
a,
very
but
long,
it's like as large as your face. It's really
it
cool.
is so big. It's so big. This is actually full caffeinated tea right now too. I am needed a little boost in the afternoon.
Oh my gosh.
That's
Okay.
my
Well,
hot
let me
tea.
know how that works for you tonight at 10 o'clock. I can't do that anymore. It
I
like,
have to stop by 4. I'm good by 4.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Now, what was I saying? I don't even remember. This feels like, man, you're making the ADHD just like manifest
I
so
know.
strongly.
We're talking about
Um,
it so much. We're bringing it up. I
but no, no,
apologize.
no. Yeah, I think I was just connecting that the perfectionistic tendencies that I certainly can identify in myself dating back to childhood, feeling
Mhm.
like I needed to do everything and be really good at it, and that there was an outcome there that I could predict around that pleasing people around me. And like, it's like every kid yearns for that belonging through performance or,
Yeah.
feeling esteemed by caregivers and parents and whatever. But yeah, I find myself saying a lot in adult life, especially in relation to my kids. I'm going to mess them up. Like,
I
it's
know.
okay. Like I can't control that. I don't want to be a perfect parent, And when I'm at my worst, when I'm out of my zone of health, I can get that way. I can be like, our rooms need to be like this, and we need to do this, and I need to do this, and why aren't we doing? And that's not who I want to be, So it's kind of like regrounding in, no, we can let the house be a mess and just feel that and
Yeah.
like I can be annoyed, internally with that and share and express those things without holding my kids to these unrealistic standards. But,
Yes.
I was going to say this last year, like the connections I've experienced across the worlds of parenting, business ownership, And I haven't even like said this out loud on a platform, so oh my gosh, drum roll, but like homeschooling my kids,
Uh-huh.
which
Oh,
was
I was
like a
hoping you would bring that up. I was like, I don't know if people know
huge
what that's about.
endeavor. Yeah, like a huge thing to kind of like opt into.
Yeah.
Yeah, the parallels that have kind of come from all three of those realms have really been very interesting. And when you are like an entrepreneur, and I mean like a true visionary, like I really relate to being visionary because, musician, creative, like this just, I get so fired up and excited about like things we can create and do like with the business.
Mhm.
Um, I just realized like, all these areas of my life are just big opportunities to like create and vision cast and dream and collaborate with others. And sure, like interacting with 6-year-olds and 4-year-olds is a lot different than interactions I have, at the workplace, but I still find myself tapping into very similar parts of myself. You know what I mean?
Yes, and with intention. That's always my word of the day is intention. Like
Yeah.
we're aware of the things that are going on, and
Yeah.
you recognize, again, going back to the intelligences that I did tangentially bring up, but is perfect is in line with this of like utilizing the different things that you're good at. It's not just book smarts. It's not just did you pass your LMFT exam? Do you
Hmm.
have the DSM memorized? Well, like, yeah, you can do some of those things, but like being able to tap into the different resources can be so helpful. And I loved what you mentioned too about perfectionism, which is also very much a thing with ADHD, and certainly like that fixed
Uh-huh.
mindset childhood energy as well of like I was so good at things naturally growing up. And so if I ever had to pause, then it was like, I can't do it because I can't fail. And that's been a big problem for me in social media. I'm so hit and miss, which honestly, like you
Yeah.
can't really, that's how I get a lot of my guests is I follow
Hmm.
them, I interact with them, we DM on
Hmm.
Instagram, but Facebook is apparently the place to go if you want to find clients, which that I'm not finding. I'm so bad at Facebook. But my perfectionism is what holds me back. I have this energy of like, if I can't say the exact right things in 50 seconds on this reel, and it needs to be groundbreaking and it needs to be genius and it needs to be earth shattering and everyone's going to follow me and viral and
Yeah.
bleh. And it's like,
Hey,
well,
I know
people,
that girl.
yeah. And it's like two things. One, it's not, if you don't do anything, nothing's going to happen. Like literally my newsletter, link in bio, sign up for that. My next week one is talking about like any action is better than inaction. Like
Hmm.
I had a client who was talking about like doing something for 2 minutes versus the example that I used is it's better to take a 5-minute walk than to do
Hmm.
nothing because you can do a 45-minute workout. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
putting something out there as long as you aren't, saying something inappropriate. But like if I'm but I don't know, maybe like that's me. The second thing I was going to say is also me showing people like you don't have to be perfect. No one is expecting perfection. I actually,
Hmm.
much like in modeling for your children, like mama's not perfect. I feel emotional issues. Here's how I deal with them when I get upset or frustrated. Therefore, you're allowed to be upset and frustrated too. You don't have to
Right.
be a robot. That's the same thing for like our clients to be able to see us
Hmm.
not be perfect. Like, well, Meg is perfect. So I got to come perfect to session and be focused and whatever it might look like. I think
Hmm.
it's just again coming back to all we're just tying in all these things too about the realism and understanding where things are coming from.
Well, and the shifts out of that perfectionism, it's like even in how you structure your podcast, I kind of love that it's like there's not a whole lot of prep. It's like let's just show up and be there and talk and see what happens because we're both full of like interesting story and experience and knowledge about our
Yes.
perspective things. So
Yeah.
it's not so like, oh my gosh, answer these 10 questions. Like, you get those podcast invitations, like, here's the 20 questions I'm going to ask you,
Uh-huh. And
which
I
I
do do
totally
that.
send people. Yeah, I was going to say,
I
I do that on mine too. I'm like,
Yeah,
here's what we're
and
going
I
to do.
it's really interesting. I used to be really, I don't want to say rigid. I was
Structured.
consistent. I was consistent in sending a potential outline acknowledging like these are just some topics that we can hit upon. Let's see where the wind, and I would always prep people like, let's see where the wind blows us. But certainly people who've come back on my show, unless they very specifically were like, I need to come back on because I need to promote this thing and I want to talk about these 5 things. I don't send an outline anymore because I'm like, we've already done this. You've been on this space. We know each other now on some level. You and I obviously known each other for a decade. So yeah, and I do think it's nice. I think it's more interesting than just like Tell me about a time when you like it's not a job interview.
Yeah, 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 no,
Nobody wants to
seriously.
listen to a job interview.
Well, and like hearing you share your experience a few minutes ago about perfectionism, like,
Uh-huh.
to that word, I'm sure so many people listening can relate. They're like, oh, I have perfectionism. And I'm like, yeah, I know that girl. But I really think, different than how you described, where yours is like focused on maybe like putting something out there that really looks perfectly, executed
Curated.
and thought out and
Yeah.
is, yeah, earth shattering or whatever. Like, I don't care so much about that stuff for me, but it's like, I mean, I do, but the thing that I fixate on, like, for me, perfectionism more ties in with like responsibility and like just doing things for others, like taking on more than I should, way more than I should emotionally, um, responsibility wise, like actual things that maybe I can let other people do instead. This is like home life and work life, and if there's one
Absolutely.
thing I learned about like starting your own business, like it will bring you back to your own work.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's cool. It's cool and it's like nobody told me that.
Yes, and
Great. Okay, so back to therapy I go.
yeah.
But it's really helpful because oh my gosh, like the I don't know, cultivation of self-awareness you're able to gain through that. Like I feel like I'm moving through life very, very awake right now, and that feels good. Like I don't feel like I'm just in this grind that is meaningless and like I don't know, doesn't matter. Like I feel like I have so carefully selected the things that I want to do for my life and I gosh, completely recognize that that's a privileged place to sit, right? But it's like, it feels good to have worked really hard and gotten to this place where, I can homeschool my kids and I can still operate a business that's growing. And like, I can still say, I want it to grow more. Like, it can be, we can help even more people because like all the responsibility is not on my back like it was 10 years ago.
Right. But that's what's so interesting too, is that piece
Mm.
of being willing to not necessarily even ask for help, but you have implemented systems that you put the work in up top that now allow you to have flexibility or to have better, different boundaries or
Mm.
all of those things that, yeah, before it was just 100% you. And it's a balancing act in figuring out, how do I put my phone away when my kids are home or when your kids are at home, but like when you're around your kids and versus like after bedtime, I still need to finish editing my podcast. So I'm going to sit and watch Ted Lasso with Austin, but I'm also going to have a headphone in and being editing that, or maybe actually just fully sitting in my office sometimes, or
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
just, again, the word is intention, like
Yeah. Yeah.
um, planning out what your week looks like, planning out what your longer term,
Mhm.
short term, long term goals, all of that. Like, I feel like I'm just
No, that one
therapy
really sticks
jargon.
out. I feel like this sounds so lame, probably because I always felt like it was lame until I really tried it. And I'm like, wow, okay, it's crazy how the simple things can really make massive impact for you. But time blocking, like when you actually put time on your calendar and say what you're going to do when you sit down in that time, my God, like how efficient I actually became, which is really
Yes.
crazy. And maybe it's also, the medicine helping out too.
Well,
But
yeah, of
but
course,
like
but
it
but the medication does also help you to be able to participate in
mhm.
the systems. Like time blocking by
Yeah.
itself, maybe
Yeah.
not. Yeah. But
Yeah.
again,
But
but this is what I wanted to say from the beginning, and you mentioned it, and I'll mention it again, and we'll mention it throughout. Like the places of privilege upon which we sit, like having somebody who gave you the diagnosis or was willing to give you the prescription, and having the insurance to pay for it, and having the access because there was an Adderall shortage during quarantine, and now there's a vitamin
mhm.
shortage, which that's mine. Like, yeah, I'm a different person when I'm on my Vyvanse. Like, I'm not as anxious because my ADHD is not manifesting itself as such. I am more capable of just sitting and doing one task versus feeling all over the place.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
quite a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, have you this feels like a side note, but have you heard of the book called The One Thing?
No, oh my gosh, what is that? Tell me.
Well, it's definitely like an entrepreneurial business book or whatever. It's been recommended to me by some coaches that I've worked with, but a couple years back, I can now reflect on this and say this clearly. I wouldn't have had the awareness back at the time. I
Mhm.
think like through stress and overwhelm and the beginning years of a business, especially one that involves like employees and having other people around and like really carrying these important responsibilities, like I think that all that kind of came out in like, what do they call it? Shiny object syndrome. And I
Mhm.
was like, ooh, well, let's go start this thing because then maybe we don't have to focus on these problems over here. So
Yes.
I went through the whole like, you know what, screw having a license. Like, I'm gonna become a coach. Let's just do that.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
while running a therapy practice. It's like, wait a minute. And it just like it crumbled, right? Like internally. I don't think anybody outside of me really knew that was
Right.
going on because, perfectionist. I'm pretty good
We
at
keep it
like
together. We're perfect over time.
exuding. Exactly. Exuding like, no, I'm okay. But I wasn't, and it was like trying to do too many things.
Mhm.
Um, and I say, like, now I can reflect on it. Like, I think that was me trying to just set all these safety nets and safeguards. Like, what if I fail? What if none of this works out? Well, let
Yes.
me go open up like 10 more ideas because I'm just a visionary. That's just what I do. I can be creative. And so, anyways, the one thing is like, focus with all your intention on
Mhm.
the one thing you should be working at. And I realized like, okay, maybe I have, a couple of things. One is like family,
Right. Right. Right.
because
Right.
that is something I've decided I want to really be actively involved in is like cultivating my kids, especially
Right.
at this young age that they're in.
Mhm.
And then obviously the business. And so I don't
Right.
know, reading that book, working with coaches, like I'm, always going to be a cheerleader for mentorship. Um, and working with paid coaches if you can, like
Yes.
and I've learned too through like communities I'm in that some people genuinely just love to help budding business owners and like don't hold back from just asking
Mhm.
like, hey, would you want to mentor me? Or hey, can I like
Mhm.
receive mentorship from you, like, maybe over coffee. Like, I'd love your feedback because you're doing something I really admire. People are
I do
very
always
willing.
encourage people. We don't love pick your brain itis, but like
Yeah.
offering compensation. Like, what is your consultant fee for an hour? I'd love to take you
Hmm.
for a
Hmm.
coffee. Like, not
Hmm.
expecting
Hmm.
people's emotional, intellectual labor,
Hmm.
but absolutely
Hmm.
asking and not
Yeah.
being afraid. I mean, that's
Hmm.
how it's weird because as much as I do hold back from a number of things, like I also have had some pretty spectacular people on the show that I'm like, oh, they would never say yes. And they're like, oh yeah, sure, I'd love to. I'm like,
Yeah. Right. Right. That is surprising. I think people
yeah,
genuinely, there's so many people that really love what they do and want to give back in some of those ways, yeah, whether it's like a podcast or just sharing information or sharing a story, like stories have really impacted me. But
mhm.
honing in on the one thing or the one thing in the different areas of my life was really helpful because I could
Yeah,
shed a lot of like just energy that was being put in places it didn't need to
yes,
be. And I guess like you said, the whole intention thing, like I got to laser focus more on like what really needed to be nurtured. And that allowed us to grow more.
yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. And I do. Not everyone here listening is a therapist, so this doesn't apply specifically, but like they talk about getting a niche in therapy. And at first
Mm.
you're like, no, but I want to be able to see all kinds of people.
Yeah.
But
I don't want to
really,
feel limited. Yeah.
yeah, and you don't feel limited, and you certainly can generally see most populations. Certainly, we are more educated, knowledgeable, experienced in certain places, but whatever, whether or not it's therapy or not, like being able to find the one thing that honestly, the one thing for me, I talk about it all the time. My expression is like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks because I am so panicked by the idea of not being able to provide for my children and
Hmm.
knowing that I want to not only be successful, like in terms of what I'm doing, but just again, like the financial component of it all, that I'm like, but if I try this and I try this and I try this, you said like, but if this doesn't work, I can do that. And if that doesn't work, then this and this and this. But
Hmm.
in finding that thing that you are so good at, you are obviously building that skill, you're strengthening that muscle, but you're also then, I mean, I'm not saying social media is the only way to become, to do an entrepreneurial endeavor, but it kind of is necessary. And
Yeah.
so putting yourself out there as the person who does kind of all the stuff, no one's really gonna know
You
what to
get
look
lost. Yeah, it's like
for.
you'll kind of
Get
get
lost.
swallowed up in the
Yeah.
noise because it is so
Yeah.
noisy out there. And
Yeah.
you're
And so
right.
like
And
that's
yeah, to the social media thing. I mean, I agree. Like it's not. the only way to build a business. I've met plenty of people that have done otherwise. Interestingly, I'm like, how? But like, if
I
it is going to be the
um,
avenue that you choose, which makes so much sense for you, and I think for me, and like businesses like ours, where we're really trying to connect with people and help people,
mhm,
um, let it be the one thing. And so be consistent and be in there and be intentional. Just keep showing up. That's like this magical potion that I also discovered over the last year. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I am gonna like keep showing up. I'm gonna keep going to my meetings. I'm gonna keep, meeting with my team. I'm gonna keep showing up. And, just that step often reminds me that, I'm walking into like a relational experience. It's not all dependent on me. I mean,
mhm.
yeah, sure, I might like my name might be on all the like legal paperwork for this place, but
Right,
like it is
right.
truly a team effort. And I love
Yes.
that acronym. Team together, everybody accomplishes more. But it's
Yeah,
so true. It's so
yeah.
true, right? It's
It
like
is
those
so true.
systems you mentioned. I mean, those systems didn't come out of nowhere. Like Sarah, our practice manager's been with us 5 years almost now. And like there's people that are just massively important to like us being where we are. And I'm so impressed that we're all like working women and moms and, dealing with a lot of different things. But it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really great too. And I know it's a little different for you because you have people who work under your umbrella and office manager and all those things, but like the flexibility and freedom that does come with owning a business and being an entrepreneur is being able to
Mhm.
say, I'm taking this week off to go visit Austin's parents in May. And of course, I have to be accountable to my clients, but they're well aware, like, hey, I'm going to be gone this whole week in May. So we'll
Right.
skip this
Right.
week and I'll see you the next, or whatever else that might be. Of course, there are financial considerations, as we talked about before we hit record, where it's like, I can't, there's a financial component to that. Like if I don't work, then I'm not
Mhm.
getting paid in this role. But being able to forecast out in the future of like setting aside money for air quotes PTO, like, okay, well,
Yeah.
this isn't
Yeah.
going to go in the checking account right now. It's going to go into a specific savings account, and then that's going to be PTO, and then I'm going to pay myself from that for that. Like there are certain things which Lindsay Bryan Podman was on an episode of mine, and I actually have had gosh, I have so many. I've dropped so many, like name dropped so many of my own episodes. This is so embarrassing. But she's so good. And I've actually done, she's been a coach of mine and talking
Mhm.
about the one thing. She didn't say the book specifically, like the one thing and the things that you're doing and how do
Mhm.
you financially set yourself up for success. And so I do encourage you to go follow her. I'll put all the links to that in the bio as well, or other people who are she's a financial social worker, but like
That's
figuring out
awesome.
the things that help you to feel set up for success ahead of time. And
Mhm.
even if that's not your reality now, manifesting, whiteboarding it, whatever that looks like for you, putting it out there, like eventually I will have a bank of 4 weeks of PTO where I can just take that time off and still have that cash to pop into my checking account or like our shared checking account or whatever your financial system looks like.
Right. Yes, and I love that. I think entrepreneurship is, that freedom that comes with it, time freedom. I think that that's one of the biggest payouts I'm feeling right now, especially because over this last year I decided to do this huge thing of homeschooling my kids. Like I knew that was going to mean certain things for me, like maybe not getting paid as much as I did the year before because I'm pulling back on clients and this and
Right.
that. But the time that I got back to be with my children is something I'm able to work with right now. Thankfully I have a partner that is working, right? Like we figured out a way to make this work.
Mhm.
But I think that to really survive, like for a business to really quote unquote make it, and to me that means like you're around for a while, like you have like a legacy, like it really becomes something that exists beyond you and maybe even after you
Mhm.
have to like know where you're going, and I think
Yeah.
it's a very different experience, like kind of being an independent, and it's like all yours and all on you, and then like choosing to shift into this other world where it's like now this could be way bigger than me.
Yeah.
And what's kind of like grounded me, because I felt unsure, in the last 5 years. I mean, you have kids and like you don't know what's happening in life anymore. Like everything's just, crazy and a new discovery and falling apart. So, like I feel clear that like I was unclear, at different points over the last 5 years around like what I wanted because I felt no capacity. I'm like, well, if this thing keeps going, like it can't be because of me because I don't have the like energy. I literally don't have the time that I had at the beginning, right? And so
Mhm.
that's when I had to start really learning and like getting more educated on. So then how do you do this if you want something to really sustain and grow and have the impact that you wanted when it all started? And so it's been like you know, getting lots of education and knowledge and support and
Mhm.
finding communities of people that are pursuing similar things, right? And like
Well,
giving
that's the
myself permission to
thing.
be a dreamer still.
Well, permission to dream, permission to think
Hmm.
big. I do love the idea of like, I also read the book 10X where it's like, whatever your
Mm-hmm.
goal is, like if your goal was to make $70,000 this year, make the goal $700,000 and like work towards $700,000. Like
Hmm.
if you that actually is kind of the cliche, like what is they shoot for the moon, and if you're not, you land among the stars. Like the moon is seven
Yeah,
hundred dollars, but if
right.
you're still however far, like
Yeah, yeah.
why
And that is
not?
such mindset work though, because it
Yeah.
pulls you back into all your own stuff. Well, do I
Mhm.
even feel like equipped to do that? Do I even feel allowed to do that? What would it mean about who I am if I did that? And
Yes.
what am I making up about who I have to be to like get there, right? Being a business
Well,
owner brings you back into a lot of like money narratives too, and just so much, so much.
Well, I feel like I'm surprised this hasn't come up sooner. And I'm obviously biased because I'm a therapist. I don't want to speak on your behalf. I'm curious what you think, but first of all, acknowledging that our entire country is a scam, especially insurance, and that access to mental health is
Hmm.
absolute luxury in this country and in many. But I do genuinely believe that everyone could benefit from a therapist. And I definitely think being an entrepreneur, it's necessary to be able to, if not, we talked about the communities earlier, like if not at least a community where you can be able to pitch these ideas to people or to talk about your setbacks or your opportunities for growth, but like being able to unpack like family history trauma of financial concerns and how that's impacting your
Hmm.
anxiety related to building your business. Like that's a thing. And you may not think about it, but like what is this thing that I'm feeling in my body as I'm talking about my QuickBooks? Like,
Hmm.
oh, you grew up with this thing with financial insecurity and you've never really thought about it, but here it is coming back to roost. Those are the kind of things that you can talk through, like I said, intentionally with a coach, with a therapist,
Right,
whatever
right.
that might look like. And so I do encourage people to consider that as well as
Yeah,
part of the journey.
100%. And I think for me, if I were not opting in to facing that work, which I don't always feel like doing, but is often very beneficial to do, I don't think I'd be able to keep pushing like I am. Like I probably would have given up a long time ago because the inner child parts of me, like, a lot of what goes on when you build a business, when you have kids, when you adult, whatever, um, can tear you down real fast. And
Yes.
so like resilience is gonna come from the more functional parts of me, the functional adult parts that are willing to like acknowledge the pain and understand it and
Mhm.
remind myself like, hey, this is how you learned to adapt when hard things happen. Like it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Like, let's go plug into that support or whatever. Yeah, I mean, that's been a game changer for me. So in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm kind of cheating because, and not cheating, but like I just have such an advantage through
Yes. Yeah.
being a therapist, especially
Mhm.
one that has gone down paths of deepening my training in the somatic work and the relevance of the childhood work and really in many experiential ways helping clients address that stuff. Like I've done the work for myself as well, and it's truly been so great. So
Mhm.
great.
Yeah.
Not always easy, but very valuable and worth it.
Well, nothing for, I mean, if you wanted to get into being an entrepreneur because you thought it was going to be easy, I might encourage you to read
Mm-hmm.
Google what the definition of it means, because it's certainly not going to be, but the emotional components that go with it as well are, they're
Mm-hmm.
part and parcel of it as well, and understanding what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece that I wanted to talk to you about was like thinking kind of like role modeling for the kids. Obviously at 4 and 6 and 4 and 2, our kids don't fully understand, you know, like my son, I tell him I teach at KU, and he pictures that being a very similar thing to his Montessori school. So
Yeah.
he'll
Yeah.
be like, oh, you're going to go see your students today? And I'm like, no, I only go on Thursdays. What do you mean you only go on there? Like, fair enough. So, but to be able to say, like, showing them those healthy boundaries, showing them sometimes you have to put in extra work and you can
Mm-hmm.
express that in a meaningful way, showing them that you are not willing to limit yourself or participate in the things that might have held you back in the past, and acknowledging that it can be really, what is the word I want to say? It's cool. I think it can be
Mm-hmm.
really cool to be able to say, like, I'm pursuing my passion.
Mm-hmm.
I built a business, and here's what ambition looks like. Here's what perseverance looks like. Here's what resilience looks like. Let me talk to you about failing, because you're
Oh
going to
yeah.
do that. And again, we've talked about it a couple times throughout, like, failing does not mean a lack of intellect. Intellect can always grow.
Mm-hmm.
Failing is how we learn. And
Mm-hmm.
so by displaying that and really expressing that to our kids, obviously in an age appropriate and meaningful way, but like as we go on, I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's a really cool thing for the kids to get to see.
Yeah, and they get so much through modeling. You know, we know that there's so much
Yeah.
research that backs that piece up right there. And something I realized the last couple of years was how previously I feel like I've made a lot of like good movement and change over the last year, but kind of previously I really compartmentalized my two worlds. Like home was home, and I became very protective of, no, I don't want to be pulling out my computer when it's like playtime and dinner time. Like I'll do that in the evening times if I need to, or I designate this other time and do it when we have childcare, you know. And then
Mhm.
when I'm at work, obviously. I don't bring my kids to work. Like we've got things set up for them. So I realized like it might be worthwhile to like integrate them a little more. Like I realized, I think I asked my daughter one day last year, I was like, do you know what I do?
Yeah.
And
And she
I
said,
I think she said no, maybe a couple years ago. This wasn't last year. This was a few years back. And I
sure.
was like, holy smokes, like I need to like tell them what I'm doing because these
Yes.
aren't like completely compartmentalized things. I want to show them, and no, they can't come to therapy sessions with me,
Sure.
but I can bring them around. They can see these other people. So I'll show them our website. I'll talk about the therapists on the team and like who they
Yeah.
are. And I'm like, oh, it's so interesting. It's like, how do you explain the kind of therapy you do to a 6-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And so you find these ways of like kind of leveling with them and just sharing that, and then leaning into their worlds with curiosity, like, oh, what do you want to do? My
Oh,
daughter's like currently in her phase of I want to be an astronaut that's a backup dancer for Taylor Swift.
great. In the astronaut outfit. In the
Uh-huh. I'm
spacesuit.
like, you're gonna do that. Cool.
That's so great though, right? Like maybe she literally will be a
Mhm.
backup dancer with Taylor Swift, who knows? But I love this compartmentalization conversation, because it just seeps into anybody who's like, I have no interest in being an entrepreneur. I work for an amazing agency or business and I'm never gonna do it again, but I'm still listening for some reason because these two yahoos are interesting. I don't know. But you're still here. But like this comes back into, I have this conversation with people so much about, yes, boundaries, right? Like I have a little clear plastic thing that I used my vinyl cutter and put like technology resting spot. And in our new house, I have exactly where I want to put it. And like Austin and I are going to put our phones in there so that kids can see, like
Yeah, yeah,
during
that's awesome.
dinner. And like, and anytime I do pull my phone out, it's like, oh, that's right. I need to order those groceries. Like, what does everybody want for dinner this week? Like, we're having a conversation. It's not just like, right.
Hmm.
And being intentional about that. So no judgment, no tea, no shade. If you're doing that, I do just encourage and like having the conversation. But
Hmm.
being able to model these things for our children, obviously I say this to my clients, I'm like, as your therapist, my goal is for you to just internalize these things for yourself and want it for you naturally. It's hard for us to do that because we've been taught that being selfish is, we need to come up with another word for selfish, by the way, like self-care,
I
self,
know, right? It's just got so much negativity wrapped around it.
you just need a full confirmed, that's what you're going to be, right? But being able to say, like, this is the thing that I'm doing, this is what's happening, this is how I'm feeling. It all goes back again to us explaining to our children, like when we can model that for them, it shows them that they don't have to be perfect either, that they're allowed to have feelings, they're allowed to have setbacks, emotions, they can cry. It's then also being able to model for them the healthy-ish, adaptive-ish ways that we deal with those things, so they can see,
Yeah.
like, this is what happens when mama gets upset about work, and this is what she does about it, or this is just in general what happens. And I think it's so helpful just in general to give ourselves that permission, because we think that we have to just always have it together for our children. And it's like,
Right.
what do you think that they're going to think they have to do when they get a job, when they get older, when they go off to college or trade school or work or whatever they do when they're not in your house anymore? And they're like, well, mom and dad were never upset about work. Mom and dad were never disagreed, never had arguments, whatever. And it's like, then they don't know what to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So us explain that to them now is so twofold. Like, you are giving yourself permission to not be perfect, and you are explaining to your children by word and vision that they don't either.
Yeah. Well, and it's that whole co-regulation thing. And we talk about that all the time in couples therapy and, parenting, right? And so, yeah, like developmentally, we need to move through these things and hold that space for our kids to have all those feels and to know they're safe and to not push them away when they're experiencing those things. But, and I don't need to go down this rabbit hole, but as a certified relational life couples therapist, one of the best things I learned through that model, and it's like a trauma-informed couples therapy model, is that like all relationships constantly are moving through these three phases of harmony, disharmony, and repair. And I'm like, once again, integrate that in with work, integrate that in with parenting, integrate that in with yourself. Like harmony, disharmony. Disharmony is like the conflict, the pain, the like disjointed moments of life where it's all just hard and messy and we don't want to deal. And we're supposed to like employ those adaptive techniques we've learned. Like we're gonna be like not looking our best through that all the time. But to then come back afterwards, make the repair, model the repair, hopefully a lot of other millennial parents out there are modeling like, hey, me and your other parent or my partner or whatever, like aren't perfect. We have disagreements, our feelings are hurt. Those are actually moments when I feel the most proud of myself, actually, is
Yes.
when I hear my daughter saying, like, hey, like, are y'all mad at each other? Like, she's curious. She's asking us because
And
she's
she feels
picking up
safe
on
to get to ask
something.
you.
Yeah, she feels safe to jut in and be like, hey, like, is mom mad right now? And there's the concern and whatever. But we attune to that. And it's like, well, yeah, I'm upset about something, but look, we're talking about it because that's what we do when we're having those moments. And it's okay.
Yes.
And she runs off. She's like, okay.
Well, because she's 6, so
But
she's like, great, let's unpack that
mhm.
further. Say more.
I know, right? But
But yeah,
yeah, it feels
well,
good to kind of rework that a little bit.
I was gonna say, and we were thinking about this earlier too. One of my proudest parenting moments is that my kids automatically now, if they can't do something, they're like, Mama, I can't do it yet. Because I really instilled the
Yeah.
growth mindset of like,
Hmm.
I can't open the honey jar
Hmm.
yet. Like, I can't reach my toothpaste yet. Like, you will be tall enough at some point to reach your toothpaste. You will be strong enough to open the honey jar at some point. So the idea
Yeah.
of not, and I hope that a lot of us can change into, again, Carol Dweck mindset, read it, love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna read it.
I flew to Salt Lake City to see my best friend from high school, and I read literally 100 pages of it in the book, in the plane. It's so spectacular. But again, like, I hope to encourage everyone to have that too, entrepreneur or not. Like, I can't do
Hmm.
that yet. And I'm saying this to myself too, because I asked me the last time I did a story on Instagram because of my perfectionism. It's been about a week. So I am right there with me. I'm with you all. I'm talking to myself as well, but like, yet I can't do it yet. I haven't done it yet. It doesn't mean that I can't grow and learn and try new things or ask questions of other people who have been there before me, or any other way of achieving things. I can't do it yet.
Yep. And, again, we can't take away the reality that our kids are going to go through adversity and painful situations and
Hate it.
breakups and hurts and all those things. But by planting those seeds and building those muscles and those mindsets at these very young formative ages, like that just excites me because it's like, man, they're going to like be in that moment, but also know in that moment in their bodies at their core it
Mhm.
will be okay. Like, I
Mhm.
will get
Yes.
through it, and
Yes. This
that's really
sucks.
special.
Yeah, this sucks. It's okay to not be okay. I will be
Mhm.
okay moving forward. I love that. Yeah.
I love it too.
Great.
Yay,
Well,
this is like perfect timing.
I was just gonna say you have to go. I
Yes.
love that. And literally we are 1 minute past the not hard out, but the ish out. So let's go team. So tell everyone where they can find you because I know
Mhm.
you've got the podcast, you've got Millennial Life Counseling. Yeah, tell us all.
Yeah, I mean, you can listen to the Millennial Life podcast really anywhere you can stream a podcast. It's on our website too, millenniallifecounseling.com. And that's our practice based out of Dallas, where, anybody can find one of our therapists. Again, we definitely mostly do relational work, a lot of work with couples. Not only couples, though, a lot of deep relational work with individuals that are really wanting to work through attachment stuff and childhood stuff, just
Mhm.
all those things that kind of feed into why am I the way that I am in relationship? Many different kinds of relationship. I personally really enjoy working with entrepreneurs and business owners and have plenty of those in my office. Just great people that are trying to improve their relational health. And that's what we are all about.
Yes.
Really want to promote relational wellness for
Yes.
life because it's
Yes.
so possible.
Because we don't live in a silo vacuum. We do have
Mm-hmm.
to interact with other people. And it's good to, again, build that community,
Mhm.
find those ways. Like we talk
Yeah.
about the village that it requires. And it's like, we don't live multi-generationally anymore. And obviously, as evidenced by me, we move a lot away from family. And so it's fight being intentional. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard. It's not like, oh my gosh, go make friends, obviously, but try and
Mhm.
find those things. Do you all
Mhm.
do virtual and in person?
We do. Yeah, we
Okay.
do. And
And do you
nobody's
have,
dual state licensed or anything. We're all
that's what I was going to
Texas.
ask.
I know we're not all
I
like you. I'm so impressed. And like, how many states have you got at this point?
hate.
That's amazing. That's
But
great.
I'm so ready. I'm so here for this multi-state compact because
Yeah.
it's ridiculous that we don't have
Yeah.
federal
Yeah.
licensure in social work and in family therapy and in mental health counseling. But again,
Yeah. Yeah.
believe me, my senators in Kansas know how I feel about it.
Yep.
So yeah.
Known. Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
you do
And so
such important work, and I'm very grateful to be a little voice on your big podcast because you do have a ton of really amazing people that have come on. Like, I look forward to the day you reference mine in one of your other ones.
I know I'm so excited. I can't wait. That's what I let, this has to be a record. I have 3 name drops of previous episodes and those links will be in the bio obviously with yours as well and the link to your show, but that's
Mhm.
great to know too that you have some outside of Texas because I know I have a lot of people who are in different states,
Mhm.
um, who will want to access that as well. And of course if you want to, please go to the website and you'll be able to find that specifically. We're not going to list everything out right here today. So
Yeah.
well, thank you so much for this. Thank you for going on this wild journey with me of the opposite of having an outline for a conversation, but I still really enjoy it. So, and
I
thanks to
know,
the
I did
listener who's still
too.
here.
I think we hit on some very meaningful points, and I hope there were some takeaways. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, listener, for being here. Remember, be curious, not judgmental. Goodbye.